Hello, I'm really glad you're here tonight. This hour is different from the rest of the day. It doesn't ask you to decide anything. It doesn't ask you to perform or explain or keep up. It simply invites you to lie still and let your thoughts move at their own pace. As the years pass, nighttime becomes a kind of companion, a place where the mind is free to wander without interruption, where memories return, not urgently, but patiently, where understanding settles in quietly, without needing words. Later in life, the mind doesn't race the way it once did. It reflects, it revisits, it connects dots that once seemed unrelated, and it does this most honestly when the lights are off and the world has gone silent. This space is for those thoughts, the ones that don't surface during the day, the ones that arrive only when you're alone with yourself, resting, remembering, and gently making sense of a long, lived-in life. So take a slow breath. Let your body soften into the bed and allow this night to meet you where you are. And now, before we begin, if this kind of honest, gentle reflection speaks to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And down in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are right now. There's something comforting about knowing we're all here together, scattered across time zones, but united in these late hours when the world finally grows still. So settle in, adjust your pillows, find a comfortable position, and know that for the next hour, you're not alone in whatever wisdom you're carrying, whatever love you've gathered, whatever understanding you've earned across the long and beautiful span of your life. Let's begin. There is a kind of love that only time can build. Not the love that announces itself with racing hearts and nights you can't sleep through, though that kind has its own breathless, irreplaceable beauty. Not the love that feels like falling, though falling is so often where it starts. This is the love that comes after, the love that has been tested by ordinary Tuesdays and long winters, and the small, grinding friction of two lives pressed close together. The love that has seen you sick and stubborn and wrong about things and stayed anyway. Not because staying was always easy, but because something in it understood from very early on that easy was never the point. You know this love. You have lived inside it for years. And tonight, as the world outside goes still and the darkness settles around you like something patient and unhurried, that love comes back to you. Not as a memory exactly, more like a presence, like something that has always been just beneath the surface of your days, resting quietly, waiting for a moment exactly like this one to rise. Tonight, we are going to walk slowly through the deepest connections of your life, the ones that formed you gradually, the way rivers form canyons, not through a single dramatic event, but through years of gentle, persistent presence. We are going to let those connections return. Let the people who mattered most come back to you in the softest, most tender way. Let the love you have given and received across a lifetime be honored here, in this quiet hour, while the rest of the world sleeps. So breathe. Let your body grow heavy against the mattress. Let your hands rest. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders find their way down. Let this night be a kind of homecoming to every heart that has ever known yours. There was someone who knew you before you knew yourself, before you had language for what you felt, before you understood what kind of person you were becoming or what shape your life would eventually take. Someone was already there, looking at you with a particular quality of attention that no one else in the world has ever quite replicated. A gaze that didn't need you to be anything other than exactly what you were in that moment. Small, unfinished, still becoming. Maybe it was a parent, maybe a grandparent whose hands were rough with years but always gentle when they reached for you. Maybe it was a neighbor, a teacher, someone who appeared in your early life like a quiet and unexpected gift and stayed long enough to leave something permanent inside you. But there was someone whose presence felt like shelter, not in the way that buildings are shelter, but in the way that being truly seen by another person is shelter, that invisible, essential kind. You remember things about them that you have never quite found words for, the specific weight of their hand on your shoulder, the way their voice changed when they were worried about you, how it got quieter rather than louder, as if concern made them careful with you. The expression on their face in the unguarded moments when they didn't know you were watching, when you caught a glimpse of who they were before the world had shaped them into the role they performed each day. In those moments, you saw something private and human and entirely real, and it stayed with you. They loved you in the language they had available, and that language, like every human language, was imperfect. It was constructed from their own history, from the love they had received and the love that had been withheld from them, from their own fears and their own inheritances and their own understanding, limited and shaped by experience of what it meant to truly care for another person. Sometimes that understanding was wide and generous and gave you exactly what you needed. Sometimes it was narrow or frightened or simply not equipped for what you were going through, and it left you wanting something they didn't know how to give. You have sat with this truth over the years. You have turned it over in your mind in quiet moments, not unlike this one, in the late night hours when the distance of time makes honest reflection possible in a way that raw feeling never allows. And what you have arrived at, slowly, without any single revelation, but through the gradual accumulation of understanding, is something that resembles grace. Not the grace of forgetting, not the grace of excusing what was hard or pretending the gaps didn't leave their marks. They did. Some of them left deep marks. But the grace of seeing the whole picture, of holding the imperfection and the love together, side by side, in the same open hands, without needing one to erase the other. They were doing their best, with what they had, with what they knew, with the weight they were carrying at the time. Weight you may not have been fully aware of. The invisible burdens that adults carry so carefully around the children they love. They were human, entirely and completely human. And they loved you. Both things are true simultaneously. Both things will always be true, no matter how long you live or how deeply you reflect on them. You let their face come back to you now. You don't arrange it into something easier than it was. You don't simplify it into either pure warmth or pure pain. You just let it be real, with all its lines and expressions, all its familiar particular quality, the eyes that knew you, the mouth that said your name. You breathe slowly and you let yourself feel whatever arises. Gratitude, tenderness, the complicated ache of missing someone who shaped you. The quiet recognition that being known, even imperfectly, even partially, is one of the greatest gifts one person can offer another. They were the first story of love you ever lived inside. They gave you your first understanding of what it meant to matter to someone, and what it meant to have someone matter to you. And you carry them still, in the way you love others, in the instincts you follow when someone you care for is struggling, in the patterns you've repeated and the patterns you've consciously broken in everything. Then came the friendships, the ones that began in the most ordinary ways imaginable. A shared look across a room, a seat on a bus, neighboring lockers in a hallway you both walked every day until one day, almost without planning it, you started walking it together. Friendship begins in proximity and coincidence, and the simple fact of being in the same place at the same time. But the friendships that last, the ones that deepen over years and survive the separations and the different seasons of life, those are something else entirely. Those are built. They are sustained by something more than geography. They are held together by genuine, accumulated, tested care. You think about the friend who knew the version of you that almost no one else ever saw, the you that existed on an unremarkable Wednesday afternoon when nothing was scheduled and the conversation could go absolutely anywhere, and usually did. When you talked about things you'd never said aloud to anyone else, and discovered in the saying of them that you were more interesting to yourself than you had previously realized, that you had thoughts worth having, feelings worth examining, a perspective on life that was genuinely your own. That friendship was a mirror, not the flattering kind that softens everything, a real mirror, one that showed you clearly enough that you could see yourself honestly and still feel accepted, still feel remarkably loved more for the honesty than despite it. Because real friendship doesn't love you despite who you are. It loves you including all of it, the uncertainty and the contradiction, the ambition and the fear sitting side by side, the parts you're proud of and the parts you're still figuring out what to do with. You had conversations in those friendships that changed you in ways you couldn't have predicted. Sometimes it wasn't even a grand conversation. Sometimes it was something small, a question they asked that you hadn't thought to ask yourself, a moment where they understood something about you before you had finished understanding it yourself, and said so carefully, quietly, in a way that felt like a gift being handed over with both hands. You received it. You kept it. You still have it. You remember a specific friendship like this. You don't have to name it aloud. You just let it come back. The particular era of your life when it was most alive, most active, most essential. The things you did together, the places you went. The way laughter arrived easily between you, real laughter, the helpless kind that makes your whole body participate, that leaves you breathless and a little sore and entirely grateful. The way silence was also comfortable, the way you could sit together in a car or a kitchen or on a porch without filling every moment with sound, because the presence itself was enough. Because being together didn't require anything in particular to happen. Some of those friendships are still alive in your life, still active and breathing and mutual, still relationships where both people show up in the ways that count. The phone call that begins as a quick check-in and lasts an hour and a half. The visit where the house fills up with warmth and you don't want it to end. The message that arrives on an ordinary day and says simply, "I was thinking about you," and means it completely and requires nothing in return. These friendships are among the most extraordinary things in your life. You understand this now with a clarity you may not have had at 30 or even 40. Now you know what they cost, how many things could have interrupted them, how easily lives diverge and people drift and connection fades when no one is tending it. The fact that these friendships are still here, the ones that genuinely matter, is not an accident. It is the accumulated result of small, consistent, repeated choices to reach out, to show up, to care even when life is full, and reaching feels like effort. You made those choices, so did they. That shared choosing is its own form of love. Other friendships faded, not through dramatic rupture or specific failure, though some of those happened too, but through the slow, quiet drift of lives moving in different directions, different cities, different decades, different needs that the years produced. You lost touch with people who once knew you more fully than almost anyone. People who were essential to a particular chapter of your life. And then the chapter closed, and they remained inside it, living and real somewhere out in the world, but no longer present in your daily life. There is a particular kind of grief in this that rarely gets acknowledged directly. Not the sharp grief of loss, but the soft, recurring ache of missing someone who is still alive and simply far. Because they're out there, having their lives, having their own quiet nights, maybe lying awake occasionally, in the same wondering, tender way you lie awake now, thinking of you. You hold those friendships tonight with care. They gave you things you still carry without always realizing you're carrying them. The way you became capable of real vulnerability by practicing it first with them. The way you learned what it meant to be a good friend by having one. The person you are in every relationship you've had since then has been shaped in part by what those friendships taught you about honesty, about loyalty, about the particular bravery required to let someone actually know you. They shaped you, all of them, the ones that are still here and the ones that live now only in memory. You carry them all forward. And then there is the love that arrived differently from all the rest. The love that rearranged your interior world without asking permission. The romantic kind. The falling kind. The love that makes ordinary things feel transformed because they are shared with one particular person. The morning light in a room where they are present. The sound of their voice reading something aloud to you. The way your name sounds in their mouth, and only in their mouth, in a way that belongs to no one else. You remember what the beginning felt like, the way your attention became involuntarily fixed on one face, one presence, with an intensity that was almost impossible to explain to someone who hadn't felt it, and entirely unnecessary to explain to someone who had. The way hope took on a very specific shape, the way the future suddenly reorganized itself around a single possibility, the way you wanted to know everything about them, their stories and their opinions, and the small specific details that made them precisely and exactly who they were. You wanted the whole of them, every layer. You were younger then and understood less about love than you believed you did. You thought certain feelings would always be this immediate, this urgent, this loud. You hadn't yet learned that love changes form, that it deepens past the electric surface of feeling into something that lives in the body and the habit and the rhythms of a shared daily life, that the quietest love is often the most profound, that it can become so woven into your existence that you mistake it for the air itself, present everywhere, essential, invisible, until you try to imagine breathing without it. But first, there was the falling, and it was real. It was one of the great experiences of your entire life, to want someone that completely, to choose deliberately and consciously to let another person matter to you at that level of depth. There is a courage in falling in love that no one talks about enough. The courage to open yourself to something that carries no guarantees. To say, knowing what you know about endings and loss and the thousand ways love can disappoint, yes, I'm willing. I'm here. I'll risk it. You said yes. More than once in your life, perhaps. You kept saying it, even when earlier yeses had led to pain. Even when the endings were difficult and the aftermath asked hard things of you. Even when you woke up in the morning of a loss and wondered if opening your heart had been worth everything it cost. You found, again and again, that it was. That the answer, when you sat with it honestly, was always a quiet and definitive yes. Because loving, even when it ended, made you more. It enlarged you. It made you more human in the truest sense. More understanding of what others feel. More patient with the beautiful, difficult mess of being alive. You think now about the love that lasted. The one that moved past the falling and into the long, complex, sustaining country of real partnership. The love that required, day after day and year after year, not just feeling, but decision. Not just passion, but patience. Not just the natural ease of beginning, but the chosen, continuous investment of two people deciding in the ordinary moments to remain. That love taught you things nothing else could have. It taught you that real intimacy is not primarily physical, though the physical is part of it. It is the intimacy of being fully known, of someone recognizing the expression on your face before you speak, of knowing exactly how they take their coffee and them knowing yours without asking, of understanding each other's silences. Which ones mean peace and which ones mean trouble? Which ones need to be broken and which ones need to be respected? Of being together in a room and feeling the room change simply by virtue of their presence in it. You lie here now and let that love return in its fullest form. Not the idealized version, not the simplified, smoothed over version. The real one. With all its history and all its texture, with everything it asked of you and everything it gave, with the seasons it moved through, the warm ones and the difficult ones, and the long, steady, ordinary ones that make up most of a lifetime together. It is the great love of your life, not because it was perfect, because it was real, because it asked things of you that you had to grow to meet, because it gave things to you that you hadn't known to want, because it changed you so thoroughly and so gradually that you can no longer remember with any clarity who you were before it found you. The night is deep now, still and dark and entirely yours. Your body has grown heavier against the mattress. Your breath has found its own slow, unhurried rhythm. The memories are not clamoring tonight. They are simply present, rising and settling gently, like the breath itself, like the tide, like all the things in life that are always moving but never seem to rush. You have loved across a lifetime. You have been loved. You have built connections so deep that they became part of your very structure, part of the architecture of who you are, part of the way you understand yourself and the world and what any of this means. This is not a small thing. This is not incidental. This is, perhaps, the most central thing. the lifelong accumulation of love given and received, offered and returned, grown slowly in the rich soil of time. And tonight, all of it rests here with you, quietly, without demand, without urgency, like all the hearts that have ever known yours, gathered in the stillness around you. Let that be enough for now. Let the warmth of being known truly, deeply, across many years, fill this moment completely. Let the love settle around you, like the covers, like the darkness, like the night itself. There is more to come, more to sit with, more to honor in the second half of this night together, more to let rise gently from the deep, lived-in well of your experience. But for now, rest here, in this, in the knowledge that you have loved well and been loved, that you have shown up again and again for the people who mattered, that the connections you have built across a lifetime are real and deep and lasting and entirely worth every difficult, beautiful thing they required of you. You are held tonight by every heart that has ever known yours. You are not alone in this darkness. You never have been. Rest now. The second half of the night is waiting, and it will meet you gently, exactly where you are. And there is still more to explore together before sleep finally comes. The story of your lifelong loves does not end with the falling or the lasting or the long, beautiful complexity of a deep partnership. It continues, it broadens, it deepens in directions you may not have fully considered before now, in directions that only this kind of hour, this quiet, unhurried, late-night hour, makes it possible to go. Because love, real love, the kind that grows across the long years of a life honestly lived, does not stay still. It moves, it changes shape, it finds new channels and new expressions and new reasons to keep mattering. It gives itself away and comes back transformed. It asks new things of you as the years pass, and you become new versions of yourself. And it rewards every single bit of what it asks, sometimes immediately, sometimes only after years, sometimes in ways you don't fully recognize until a night exactly like this one, when the world is quiet enough to see clearly. So breathe again. Let your body settle a little further into the mattress. Let your eyes remain closed and your breath remain slow and unhurried. The night is still deep. There is still time. There is still so much here to hold gently, together, before you rest. There came a moment in your life when love stopped being only about receiving. It happened gradually, the way most truly important transitions happen, without announcement, without ceremony, without any single day you could point to and say, that was when it changed. You simply noticed at some point that you were no longer looking primarily outward, waiting to be seen and held and known. You were looking toward others with that same intention, with the quiet desire to offer something real, to give something that lasted, to become for someone else what others had once been for you. This is one of the great invisible turnings of a life, the shift from being the one who mostly needs love to being the one who actively, deliberately, consistently offers it, to becoming a source of the thing you once only sought. It changes you in ways that are difficult to put into language, but entirely unmistakable to feel. It opens something in you that had always been there, waiting. The capacity not just to receive care, but to extend it outward, fully, generously, without always requiring that it come back in equal measure, simply because someone needed it and you had it to give. You think about who received that love from you, the people you truly poured yourself into, the ones for whom you showed up in the difficult seasons, the seasons that ask more than you believe you have, the ones you sat beside in hospital rooms, the ones you answered in the middle of the night when the phone rang and the voice on the other end needed something only your particular presence could provide, the ones whose grief you carried alongside your own without making it about yourself, the ones you chose again and again, quietly and without fanfare, to prioritize over your own comfort and your own ease. If you had children, you know this love most acutely. The love of a parent for a child is unlike anything else in the entire landscape of human feeling. It is not like romantic love. It is not like friendship. It is something without precedent, something that arrives with the child and never entirely leaves, not when they grow, not when they move away, not when the relationship becomes complicated or the distance between you widens or the years change both of you in ways you couldn't have predicted when they were small. You remember the first time you truly understood the scale of what you felt for them. Maybe it was in the earliest days, looking at a face so new to the world it seemed almost impossibly real. Maybe it was later, watching them sleep, watching them navigate a hard moment with unexpected grace, and feeling your heart open to something that had no bottom and no edge. A love that terrified you slightly with its enormity. A love that made the world feel simultaneously more beautiful and more fragile. Because now, there was something in it you could not endure the thought of losing. You worried about them endlessly, in ways that never fully subsided regardless of how grown they became. You worried about their safety and their happiness, and whether they felt loved enough, seen enough, prepared enough for the specific and relentless difficulty of being alive in the world. You made mistakes in loving them. All parents do, and knowing this doesn't make your mistakes smaller, but it places them inside something human rather than something damning. You held on too tightly in some places and released too quickly in others. You gave your anxiety where you meant to give confidence. You gave silence where you meant to give understanding. But underneath every imperfect attempt, underneath every moment of doubt, and every choice you wish you had made differently, the love was real. It was enormous and sincere and daily. And if they are grown now, if they have their own lives and their own quiet nights, they carry that love forward with them. Even when they cannot name it, even when the complexity of the relationship makes it difficult to see, it went into them and it stayed. And if you did not have children of your own, you have still loved in this selfless parental direction. There are nieces and nephews, younger friends, students whose lives you watched and believed in and quietly tended, neighbors' children who spent so much time in your home, they practically became yours. People for whom you were a reliable, caring, steadfast presence during the years when reliable and caring and steadfast were exactly what they needed. This love is not smaller for lacking an official name. You gave yourself to people who needed someone who believed in them, and you were that person. That matters beyond measure. And then there are the ones you loved who are no longer here. This is the deepest territory we will sit inside together tonight. The love that continues after loss. The love that has nowhere left to go in the physical world and so turns inward, becoming something else entirely. Memory, gratitude, the tender, recurring ache that is really just love with nowhere left to land. You have lost people. You carry them. You have learned over the years the specific weight of each absence, how grief is not uniform, how each loss has its own texture and its own particular shape of missing, how losing a parent is different from losing a friend, how losing someone to a long illness is different from losing someone suddenly, without warning, without the chance to say the things that needed to be said, how even losing a relationship, one that ended rather than died, carries its own grief that doesn't always receive the recognition it deserves. You remember the first time you understood loss in a way that was no longer abstract. Not the intellectual understanding that everything ends, which comes early and is manageable in theory, but the bodily, undeniable understanding that someone you loved is gone and the world simply continues as if nothing has ruptured, as if something irreplaceable has not just been removed from it permanently. That understanding changes you. It closes a door you didn't know was open, the door that led to a version of the world where certain losses hadn't happened yet, and it opens another door, a door into a more honest relationship with the temporary nature of everything, with the preciousness of people while they are still present, with the urgency and importance of saying what matters before the opportunity disappears, because opportunities disappear always and usually faster than expected. You let someone come back to you now, someone whose absence carries weight. You don't force the memory or brace against it. You just gently allow them to return, their face, their particular way of being in a room, the specific quality of what it felt like to be known by them. You let yourself miss them in the quiet, real way that this dark, still hour permits. You know now, in the way that only time and loss together can teach, that grief is love's final form, that the missing is the loving, carried forward, that the ache you feel for those who are gone is not a wound requiring closure. It is a testament. It is evidence of something that was real and deep and genuine. It is the lasting proof that the connection between you mattered, that they were here, that you were changed by them, that love at its truest does not require the presence of the beloved to continue. You carry them with you. That is not a burden. It is the highest honor a life can hold. The privilege of having loved someone so real that their absence reshapes you. Let them be with you tonight. Let them rest near you in this stillness. Let the love that has no destination fill this quiet room with something that resembles their presence. Soft, true, without pain. And let yourself acknowledge tonight, gently, fully, without hurrying past it, what their presence meant, how the world looked different with them in it, how ordinary moments held different weight when shared with them, how their particular way of laughing or thinking or caring about things was entirely irreplaceable, and how the world has genuinely not been quite the same without it. This acknowledgement is not grief that has gone wrong. It is love being honest about what it held. They would want you to rest. They would want you to be well. They would want you above all else to keep going, to keep living, to keep loving the people still here with the same fullness and the same willingness you gave to them while you had them. You have been doing exactly that. You have kept going, and that too is a form of love. There is also the love you have learned, slowly and with great difficulty, to offer yourself. This is the love that came last, the one requiring the most patience and the most dismantling of old beliefs you didn't realize you were carrying. The love of self, not vanity or self-congratulation, not the performed contentment of someone who needs to appear well. The real thing, the patient, honest, quiet practice of treating yourself with the same tenderness you have always extended to others. You are not always capable of this. Most people are not. It is genuinely easier, in certain ways, to love others than to love yourself. Loving others does not require you to confront what you dislike about yourself. It does not demand that you sit with your own failures without immediately turning toward shame. It does not ask you to hold your own imperfection with the same compassion you would instinctively offer a friend. But you have learned, gradually, imperfectly, in the slow, honest way that all real and lasting learning happens. You have learned that the harshest voice in your experience has often been your own, that the standards you applied to yourself were standards you would never dream of applying to someone you cared for, that the automatic self-criticism you practiced so fluently for so many years was not actually making you better. It was simply making you smaller. At some point, you began to question that voice, to notice when it arrived and what it said and whether any of it was actually accurate or whether it was just the echo of old fears. You began to extend to yourself something closer to the grace you had always extended to others. To recognize that you were doing your best with what you had, the same belief you'd held about every imperfect person who had loved you imperfectly across your life. To treat your own limitations with something approaching the gentleness you'd have offered a dear friend in the identical situation. You lie here tonight and you practice it now. The deliberate, quiet choice to be gentle with yourself, to look back at the full length of your life and choose to see it with the eyes you would use for someone you loved completely. Not to excuse or diminish what was hard, just to see it whole, to see the love behind the failures, to see the effort beneath the mistakes, to see the person who was always, in every moment, trying her best, his best, their absolute best, with whatever tools and understanding and strength were available in that particular moment. There is a specific kind of courage in self-forgiveness that no one talks about enough. It requires you to look directly at what you wish had been different, and then, without looking away, decide to stop using it against yourself. To say, I know what happened, and I know I played a part in it, and I choose to carry it gently rather than like a punishment. This is not weakness. This is among the most difficult and necessary work a person can undertake, and you have done it. Imperfectly, yes, incompletely perhaps, but genuinely, you have moved across the years toward a more honest and forgiving relationship with your own humanity. That person deserves rest. That person deserves this dark, quiet room and these warm covers and this gentle night. That person has earned the peace that is available right now, in this moment, if you are willing to accept it without condition. You are willing. You have always been willing, even when it was hard to find the way. You think now about what love has actually built inside you. Not abstractly, not philosophically, practically and specifically. The person lying in this bed tonight, at this exact hour, the full and particular and irreplaceable person you have become. How much of that is the work of love? your patience, the way you can sit with someone in their difficulty without rushing toward a solution. You did not arrive in the world with that capacity fully formed. You developed it over years of loving people who needed to be heard rather than fixed, who needed your presence more than your answers. Love made you patient in ways that nothing else could have. Your capacity for forgiveness, not the performed variety, the actual internal release of resentment, the real willingness to allow someone's failing to be one part of the story rather than the defining whole. You learned this slowly, across relationships that required it of you, and it changed the entire quality of your interior life. Love taught you how to forgive, the way you listen now, the quality of your attention when someone is trying to tell you something that matters to them. You hear beneath the words. You hear what isn't quite being said. You hear the feeling that lives under the surface of the explanation. You became a listener like this because people loved you enough to keep talking even when you weren't yet fully hearing them, and their persistence gave you the opportunity to grow. Your tenderness, the way you feel things, the way an ordinary evening light or an old song or a child's laughter or the smell of rain on warm pavement can move you in ways that might have surprised your younger self. That restless, defended, less open version of you, that permeability, that openness to being genuinely affected by the beauty and the sadness of ordinary life, that is love's doing. A long life of loving people opens you. It makes you more rather than less susceptible to being moved by the world, more capable of wonder, more comfortable living inside feeling. These are not minor gifts. They are the evidence of everything. Every connection that cost you something and gave back more. Every friendship tended across the years. Every falling and staying and necessary letting go. Every loss endured and carried. Every brave, wholehearted, imperfect attempt at real closeness with another human being. It all built something in you that is permanent and real and worth seeing clearly tonight. You are the sum of every love that has moved through your life, the ones that remained and the ones that left, and the ones that changed form but never fully disappeared. They are all in you, right now, in this room, in the way you breathe and the way you think and the way you feel this darkness as something safe and familiar rather than frightening and cold. The night is at its deepest now, the hour when the world is most completely still and the mind has grown most quiet, and something in you that lives deeper than thought can finally be heard without interference. And what it says in this stillness is not complicated. It says you have not wasted this, that you have used this life for what it was made for, that you have loved in all the imperfect and persistent and costly and entirely glorious ways a person loves across a long and genuine life. That you have let people in, that you have been let in, that you have stood beside people in their hardest hours and allowed people to stand beside you in yours, that you have said the words that mattered and meant them, that you have shown love in the 1,000 quiet daily ways it is actually demonstrated, not in grand gestures, but in the sustained, ordinary, faithful choice of caring for someone across time. And now the night holds all of that, all of you. The long, full, complicated, luminous story of your heart, and every heart that has been fortunate enough to know it. Let your body go heavy now. Let your breath slow to its own quiet rhythm. Let your hands open and release. Let the muscles in your face soften completely. Let the darkness in this room be exactly what it is, not empty but full. Full of every loving connection your life has carried. Full of every whisper that ever passed between you and another heart in the long, sweet hours of an ordinary night. You have done something remarkable across the years of your life. You remained open, even when closing would have been easier, even when openness led to pain, even when people you let in disappointed you or left or were taken before you were ready. You kept opening, you kept choosing, you kept saying in your own way, in the quiet actions of a daily life, yes, I am still here, I am still willing. I still believe that this, the love of it, all of it, is worth everything it asks. That belief, kept alive through every difficulty, is the most enduring thing about you. And it has made a life, a real and full and deeply permanently meaningful life. So let sleep come now. Let it come the way it comes on the very best nights. Not as escape, but as completion, as the natural, earned, peaceful end of a day and a life that has been genuinely, courageously, beautifully full. All the hearts that know you are at rest tonight, wherever they are, beside you or far away or in the quiet beyond distance. They are gathered around you in the invisible, permanent way that love gathers across every year and every change and every goodbye. You are held in the center of all of it, in the web that a lifetime of real connection builds and sustains, strong and lasting and entirely yours. You are loved. You are known. You have mattered deeply and truly and completely to the people who were lucky enough to find their way to you. This is enough. This is, in fact, everything there is and ever was. Let it hold you now. Let it carry you gently from this wakeful, tender hour into the country of sleep. There is nothing left to carry tonight. Nothing left to solve or protect or hold tightly. Everything is already safe. Everything is already held. The fires die down, the stories settle, and the world grows still. Let your thoughts drift away, like embers on the wind. Good night. You've journeyed far through time tonight. Now it's time to journey into dreams. Close your eyes, breathe, and let sleep find you.